Hello, everyone, and welcome to the YouTube Creators Hub podcast, the conversation portion of the show today. I am joined today by Justin from the Justin Resells YouTube channel. Justin has just under 100 videos and almost 32,000 subscribers. Justin is in the reselling and flipping niche on YouTube, and he is a serial entrepreneur, content creator, and tech startup founder. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Looking forward to this conversation. I have been now for a couple of days since we kind of set it up. I want to ask you just quickly, not really quickly, but if you would, give us the origin story of the channel. So 92 videos ago, when you hadn't uploaded on YouTube, you were obviously an entrepreneur. You had that solopreneur mindset. Give us the journey of from kind of ideation to start, like the whole journey of the Justin Resells channel. How did it happen?
Sure. Yeah. So I've always been interested in video production and editing and things like that. So I've been making videos and putting them online really for like 20 years,
Right.
pre YouTube for sure. And so I have some experience, just working with video and working with editing. It's always been sort of a passion project for me to do things like that. I started working on YouTube in a variety of ways, probably 10 or 15 years ago, but never really successfully and never officially and never really tried to establish any sort of presence on YouTube. I would just create videos and put them out there and, basically nobody would watch them. But I've been dabbling in reselling and eBay and that type of thing for kind of an equally long period of time. And I guess it was right around pre-pandemic, 2019, 2020, I started to notice people popping up in the reselling world on YouTube and creating that type of content there. And so I started watching that content myself and was really interested in it. And, I've just like anyone else been watching a lot of YouTube as well. But decided like I wanted to kind of combine my passion for video editing and production there with reselling and sort of, be a part of put my voice out there and be a part of a community and build that. And so that's really how it got started. For many years, nobody watched it at all. I was really creating content for myself for the most part. And I actually had a different channel name. It was called This Week in Flips, kind of with a concept of talking about how my week was going as a reseller and doing all that. And I ended up pivoting, many years later. I'd say, I mean, if you look at my graphs on YouTube, there's like 2 or 3 years where it's a completely flat line, close to zero in terms of views. And then so at some point last summer, probably June or July, I just had one video take off and, it's been pretty solid growth since then. So that's kind of the origin story.
Yeah, and your videos are now averaging tens of thousands of views, some of them even more than that, because you do offer some informational kind of evergreen type content. So explain to the audience exactly what you do and what you cover. We talked about it being reselling and flipping and things like that, but like how have you niched down? Like what would people expect if they were to come to the Justin Resells channel?
Sure. Yeah. In the reselling world on YouTube, there's kind of two different categories of content. There's people who are making reselling content that are like strapping a GoPro to their chest and walking around
Yeah.
thrift stores or
Right.
garage sales. And I love watching that content. That's just never really been my style of video. I sort of wanted to take the other approach, which is the educational approach, and sort of, make videos that are more evergreen and that are teaching people sort of how to find success on eBay. And really, to me, it's a lot bigger than just eBay. I think, I have found that eBay is kind of like a gateway drug to entrepreneurship, where for a lot of people, it's the first time that they realize like, oh, I can actually make some money on my own without having a traditional job. And so that's how I approach my channel, is not really, there's better channels that teach the nuts and bolts of how to use eBay and, how to configure it and how to do the best things. I do a little bit of that, but my content is really kind of more, I don't know, philosophical maybe at times, where I like to talk about sort of the mindset and the theories behind why this stuff works and how to have the right mindset to be successful versus like the nuts and bolts of how to do it. So, but it's a kind of a mixture of all of it.
How did you come to a conclusion of what your strategy was? And what I mean by that is that finding your target audience, you said you made a pivot from even changing the name of the channel. I find that a lot of creators have little to no direction in regards to who they're trying to reach, what they're trying to accomplish. Can you just give us a kind of layout, like what your strategy is and like what you're trying to get out of YouTube and kind of a behind the scenes look of from where you started till now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that's still in progress. I'm still kind of figuring out exactly what the evolution is, and maybe I'll never actually get there, but it's definitely evolved over time. And a lot of that has just been through my own study of how to create an audience on YouTube and sort of figure out what kind of audience I want to create and the types of people I want to attract to my content. And really, I just want to super serve an audience that is similar to me. And I have a particular style of reselling. I'm kind of data driven. I don't, I like to know exactly how my business is performing, and I like to make sure that I'm sort of making incremental improvements to that business over time. And I also treat YouTube the exact same way, by the way. For me, it's like, whether it's having a business on eBay or having a startup that I run on the side or YouTube itself. These are like canvases that I like to work with where I can kind of every day I go in, I can tweak that canvas a little bit and I can put some paint here, put it there, and just generally build, over time. That's sort of just my personality. And so I try to build an audience on YouTube who's similar, who wants to treat, eBay as a business. They don't want to just sort of haphazardly do it randomly and, maybe wish for success. I want somebody who's like really driven to do it, and that's the type of audience I've tried to create. And so that's how I've sort of niched down into YouTube.
Listeners of this show know that I'm very data driven myself. I love looking at the data. Whenever I have a client on, I'm coaching them in regards to YouTube or podcasting. I always say, okay, if we have some history or historical data out there, let's take a look at it and figure out what it can mean. I can almost look at a bit of data and tell you exactly what's going on without even looking, right? So explain how you're utilizing your data-driven kind of analytical mind in regards to growing the YouTube channel. How have you used the information that's provided to you from YouTube and the platforms you're on to grow and optimize the stuff you're producing and putting out there?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll say I'm still learning in that category. I would definitely not consider myself an expert. And a lot of the time that I spend in YouTube's analytics is really just trying to understand the trends and understand what it means. What am I looking at? What does it mean, and how can I reapply it, to find success? Because, I do have a handful of successful videos that have been significantly more successful than others, and naturally you want to look at that and be like, well, why was that more successful? And it's surprisingly difficult when it comes to YouTube and in YouTube analytics. There's no one metric that's like, this is exactly why that one is successful. And so a lot of it is getting a feel for the signals and the trends that you see in the data and then trying to reapply that. And so like one thing that I've just noticed pretty quickly earlier on, and I have no idea if this is right, by the way. And so there might be, YouTube experts out there who hear this and say, oh, that's completely wrong. But for me, one of the things I notice the most is how quickly my click-through rate lowers or decreases over time. And I find if I do a more evergreen video that's hitting a wider audience, it's the click-through rate is going to go down more drastically. And if that's not resulting in a significant number of views more, then I typically will try to start to tweak things to make that click-through rate go back to its highest point. And so it's about finding, to me, like in my head, I'm visualizing, the YouTube analytics as a sort of bubble, and my audience lives in that bubble. But sometimes you make videos that sort of, poke out of that bubble a little bit, and that affects your metrics in a certain way. And, it's been a journey trying to figure out exactly like, was that a good thing that my click-through rate is going down lower because it's reaching a larger audience? Is that a bad thing? Do I need to tweak it more? And so still learning a lot there in that regard.
So you mentioned the CTR. What are the changes that you make? Like what have you learned over the past, 30, 40, 50 some odd videos where you're like, okay, if the CTR is dipping, which folks listening should know what CTR, click-through rate, the amount of times that your video is shown, how many times is it clicked, what percentage is it clicked in comparison to total impressions, which is how many times it's being shown. So with that out there, what are the changes or tweaks that you're making that you've learned to help you get it or, you raise that back up?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious ones being, title and thumbnail. Really, title for me is where I focus the most of my efforts, and thumbnail also. But I think it's my opinion. It's from like an educational standpoint, an educational channel. Like the title is really important, and so those are the types of tweaks that I will make. And I have a reoccurring weekly show that I do, and I've sort of resurfaced my old channel name, which was called This Week in Flips, and now that's a recurring weekly show within the Justin Resells YouTube channel. But in that, that video has a format that I follow pretty strictly every week, where I talk about my sales numbers for the week. I talk about my top 10 sales of the week. I also answer viewer questions, and so typically what I do is I will take those viewer questions, and those will typically be how I frame the thumbnail, and the title is piquing curiosity for the viewer based on one of those questions. And so sometimes that doesn't work out very well. And I learned pretty quickly where in the first, hour and a half of my video, I'm going to expect a sort of 14 to 17% click-through rate. If it's not getting that with my core audience, I'm like, okay, I need to tweak that a little bit. And so I might go in and pick a different question from the video to reframe the title and thumbnail around and see if that performs better. And so those are the tweaks that I make sort of in the very short term. That's different though from like an evergreen standpoint. If it's an evergreen video, I have a little bit more leeway in terms of reframing it, not as quickly as I do with the early ones.
Yeah, the evergreen stuff, which is what my technology channel is really based around. It's all search based. I just do tutorials on technology.
Mhm.
I very rarely tweak a title and thumbnail in the early stages.
Yeah.
My average CTR on my channel as a whole is right around 11.8, almost
Oh, wow.
12%, which is rather good for a
Yeah, that's really good.
channel as a whole, which I'd love my impressions to go up, and maybe with the algorithm they will. But have you learned anything in regards to thumbnails? So as far as like the optimizations of your thumbnails, I've looked at your channel. I did yesterday. I have again this morning before we got on the call. I feel like that it's like everyone on YouTube. It's kind of evolved over time as far as the strategy you've used. What are some pointers and tips that you can give us in regards to thumbnail creation and kind of what works for you and what you found that doesn't work?
Yeah, I think thumbnail creation obviously is super important part of all this. And I spent a lot of time just sort of tweaking that. And I come from a sort of design background. And so I have some level of, baseline skill set in doing it already, which I think helps. Certainly no, I'm not a professional designer by any means, but kind of a lot of YouTubers when they first start out, it feels like the thumbnail is not complementary to the title, or the title's not complementary to the thumbnail. They're almost like identical. So they might, almost repeat what's in the title in the thumbnail itself. And sort of over time, you start to learn like, okay, these are two different assets that you can have play with each other, and they should be related, obviously, but they should not say the same thing. And to me, like, when you're landing on, you're pulling up YouTube on, whether it's on your Apple TV or in a browser, you're probably going to first see the thumbnail. And so I try to be somewhat impactful and have the thumbnail say something, even if it doesn't have any words on it, just have it say something to pique the curiosity and interest. And then, have the title complement that curiosity, or take it one step further, or answer it in a way that gives some indication of what they might expect. And so I try to look at it obviously as a full package. They're not two separate things. They're a full package, and they should not be saying the same things. They should be saying different but complementary things.
I love that you said that. I've really been leaning into that lately, the past 6 months. I used to always do, and a lot of my clients still do this, and it's some advice that I can give them now. I would put basically the same title in text on my thumbnail, which I feel
Yeah.
now looking back, and now that I've learned, like you said about them being two different assets, you may have someone who doesn't get intrigued by the title, but the thumbnail gets them, or vice versa. And so now instead of just one capture, you actually have two different things that can capture them, right? With
Yeah.
getting them to click on that video. Either the title will get their attention or the thumbnail. So, and again, it can vary depending on if you're doing evergreen type tutorial, informational, or entertainment. Those things will kind of change slightly, but I love that you talk about them being two separate things, and being able to optimize both separately as opposed to just thinking of them as one kind of package. It's a really good
Yeah.
way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I think, another thing that reminds me of that is I talk a lot about eBay, and all my audience knows what eBay is and they're very familiar with it. And so with my thumbnails, I also try to use exclusively eBay assets. And so what I mean by that is, like, if I'm going to show a graph that, let's say I want the video to invoke with the audience, like the idea of growth, like that's going to grow your business or whatever, I could use any number of stock images of like a chart going up, but I'll specifically use, an eBay chart that's familiar to the audience. When they don't have to think, what am I looking at? They recognize that that's an eBay chart. I think that's super important. I do that even for thumbnails that may not have anything to do with eBay. And so, for example, I think I had a video a couple of weeks ago that, in it, the design was like a little pop-up, like a little user interface pop-up, and it said, do you want to make more money? And it was like yes or no checkboxes. And I like literally used the eBay UI to build that. I used Chrome's inspect screen to change the data on the eBay page to say what I wanted it to say, because I wanted the audience to know, oh, I'm looking at an eBay screen, even though it wasn't about eBay at all. And so
Right.
it's just a way of like grabbing the audience's attention very quickly and making them familiar with what I'm talking about without saying anything.
What is something that you wish you would have known sooner? Something that now that you look back, you're like, man, I just wish I would have known that 50 videos ago or a couple of years ago. Can you speak on a couple of things maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that comes to mind is just preparation. I think it's very obvious when you're watching a video whether someone has done any sort of preparation or not. And I spent a lot of time just making videos. Like one day I would wake up and be like, okay, I'm going to make a video, and I don't really have an idea of what the concept is or what I'm going to talk about. And you watch those videos and you can tell, and you can tell that I have no concept, and I don't really know what I'm going to be saying. And none of those videos did well, but I just take a completely different approach now where not every one of my videos is scripted. Like my weekly videos are I follow the same format every single week. And so I know the structure there, but I ad lib everything inside of it. But I also do other videos that are just, I might spend 3 weeks on a script, just writing it and getting it perfect, before I actually sit down to record it. And so if I would have started doing that earlier, I would have seen, a lot better results earlier, I think.
So you think that with the preparation, which I agree, by the way, with preparation, and you can watch a video, you can listen to a show and realize that whether a person prepped or not, you can find out rather quickly, right? With the way the confidence that they kind of exude coming through the camera and just other kind of tells, right? But when you're doing your scripting and you're writing it out, you kind of do like I do. I don't really like to do scripts because I feel like it makes me sound robotic. So I do kind of more of an overview and bullet points, and I can kind of speak on those in post. I kind of take care of the make it cleaner, and transitions look very nice. So how do you structure your videos now? Like, what is your video structure, your average or normal video structure?
Yeah, I mean, my normal video structure, it's really easy. And that's another good thing about having a sort of weekly video, that I do the same thing every video, the same structure every video, every week there. And so I don't have to think about, oh, what is the structure of this video? I just know what it is. And so it's very easy for me to bang those out pretty quickly. And I do them, I film them and release them on the exact same day because they're timely. It's about the week that I just had on eBay. And so I like having that constraint of I can't spend weeks on it. I just have to get in there and do it. And it does definitely give that, a unique feel. But all my other videos, my more evergreen videos that I put a lot more time and effort into structuring, into scripting. And, I agree the same thing. Like I don't read word for word, but I do write out exactly what I want to say. And then what I end up saying in front of the camera is, close or similar, but it just helps me orient and get the story out before I actually say anything. But the structure of those are all very different from one another. And that's where I'm trying to evolve the most is as a storyteller. I think at an educational channel, it's very easy to sort of be bland and, just deliver facts. And sometimes that's good, but I really want to take a different approach, and I try to take it a different approach and try to build in, I really want to be a good storyteller, and I want to teach people while doing that. And so that's been my main focus lately, is how do I inject, personality, story, humor, those types of things into what could be a rather bland video.
How are you getting better at that? Like, what are you doing to personally become a better storyteller? Because I do believe that the people who are succeeding, people oftentimes get storytelling confused with production value. Those are two separate things, right? It doesn't mean your video is high production value. Now, that's great if it is, and we can talk about, optimization of a video, audio, and video and everything all we want, but storytelling is different. Storytelling is the ability to take a topic and intertwine personal details, different things that you have going on with you, and making it feel like the person wants to know what happens next, whether it be educational or entertainment. How are you getting better at that?
It's just really watching a lot of YouTube. I draw a lot of inspiration and, frankly, steal from other people, like especially outside of my own niche, is how I do a lot of my learning there. Is I'll watch a video and be like, okay, I like how that's structured. I like that there's, a beat of storytelling, and then they're diving into some facts, and they're back to storytelling, and they're coming. I just sort of try to visualize that in my head, and so I pull a lot of inspiration from other channels, especially outside of my niche when doing that. The hard part is actually translating that into something that makes sense for your audience, because it could be really easy to lose sight of that, and end up creating something that doesn't resonate with your audience because you're too far removed from it. And so, I try to draw that inspiration from other places, and then through my own scripting process, filter it through and make sure that I don't lose my own identity as a part of that. And I've had, varying success there. And sometimes when you feel like you put the most effort into a video, and those end up being like the worst ones that you do. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably because I'm leaning too far into something that doesn't resonate with my audience.
Yeah, oftentimes storytelling can become very stilted when you're being so specific about that's what you're trying to do. When you're trying so hard to tell a story, you're trying to do it so
Right.
well, it can become less storytelling and more just you trying to be good at something that you maybe not naturally be good at. Um,
Yeah.
when it comes to balancing your time, so work
Mm.
life balance, can you talk about kind of, you know, what do you do for a living? Is this what you do for a living? Like, how do you balance YouTube, personal relationships? Like, what are some systems and things you've put in place?
Yeah, so I really have three full-time gigs right now. I guess I would call them. I have one full-time gig and then a couple, part-time gigs. And so I consider YouTube a part-time thing. I don't spend 100% of my time on it by any means. All of these things are interconnected though. And so eBay is sort of the foundational business that I have, but that's still a part-time business for me. I only spend between 10 and 20 hours per week on my eBay business. But my eBay business, or my YouTube business would not exist without my eBay business. And so both of those work hand in hand with one another. I talk a lot to my audience about my eBay business. And if that went away, like I would have nothing to talk about. And so both of those are very connected as well. But my main gig is really the startup that I founded, which is an application called Flipwise. That's also in the same ecosystem of the world that I live in. It's an automated platform for eBay. So it allows resellers who are typically tracking all their information using spreadsheets, like their data, their sales data, and all that, manually using spreadsheets. It automates all of that for them. And so all of these are interconnected to one another as well. The more I can educate my audience and help them, I also help them by providing software that does things that saves them time and saves them money. And so all of those are interconnected. All of those take a bunch of time, and it's really difficult to balance all of them. With YouTube, it makes it easier because I can stick to a schedule. I try to do the same thing with eBay as well. I try to build a repeatable schedule. I know I'm going to work on it at these particular times and these particular days, and then everything else gets filled in with trying to run a startup, which is just, an incredible amount of time. And yeah, it's difficult. I have two kids. I got a wife. Finding time to balance all of that is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I find it to be one of the things that throws a lot of creators off is that they just can't manage it well. And when they try to, something has to give. And
Hmm.
oftentimes it's YouTube because that's what it is. So if you can kind of put those guardrails up now and kind of learn what works for you, sometimes it'll help you and prevent exhaustion and eventual burnout and quitting of YouTube. So I love that. This is a perfect transition into monetization. Let's talk about
Hmm.
YouTube specifically. Can you share with us, and would you be willing to share with us kind of how you make your money and maybe on average kind of what you're bringing in specifically from the YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I'm only from YouTube. I'm just a part of the AdSense network. You're doing that, and I don't know, like I'm doing about 2 grand a month on that. I think I had my biggest month last month in April, which was like 2,300. So I don't know. I mean, I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that but it feels relatively small considering just how many views you're pushing out there. But that's where I'm sitting right now, and I'm pretty proud of it though. That's the main, there's ways. again, this is all interconnected. And so I'm making money in other ways that are
Yeah.
related to YouTube, but it's
And
all,
that's what I like
yeah.
for you to share is that you obviously have Flipwise, which is your SaaS software as a service, right? And so
Yep.
explain how YouTube plays a role in, I mean, because I assume you have it linked in every video and you talk about it when it's natural in the videos, and then you make money on eBay. So like, is there some affiliate stuff going on? Like, is there, I mean, are there things that you're doing outside of just the partner program to make to make money?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is a great awareness builder for Flipwise, and it's part of the origin story too of the channel is like even before I built Flipwise, yeah, I would make the same exact type of content, only and basically in my weekly videos I'm talking about here's what sold, here's how much money I made on it, here's how much money I made this week. Only instead of using Flipwise, I was just using a spreadsheet, and so it has really been a natural progression of my YouTube channel to, go from using a spreadsheet. Then after that, I started using Airtable instead. Then I built Flipwise. And so people that have been with my channel for a long time have seen the evolution of the tools that I use to provide the content that I do and to run my own business. And so through that evolution, even back in the very early days, people would leave comments saying, "Hey, what spreadsheet are you using? Can I use that?" And I would just send it to them. Yeah, sure, why not? And then I switched over to using Airtable instead of, Google Sheets. Same thing happened. And I started to sell that Airtable template as well, just because it took a lot more time and effort for me to maintain it. And so it's just a natural progression to then create a SaaS product and sell that as well. I don't do a whole lot of like direct selling on there. I don't say like, hey, go buy this or anything like that. I just
It's
it has
natural.
a
Yeah.
it's natural. It has a presence on my channel, and I think the most important thing is it provides a ton of value to my audience. My audience needs this type of tool. This type of tool doesn't really exist in the way that we provide a solution, and so it's just I don't really need or want to sell it. I don't want my channel to turn into some big commercial. It doesn't need to. I can continue to do the content that I've always done, but just in a slightly different way that helps a lot more people.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I love that. I love that it fits so perfectly with your audience. And it's like with anything in entrepreneurship, you solve a problem. You find what
Yeah.
that problem is and you solve a problem. And that's what you've done. And you're creating this free content on YouTube where these people who would need this tool are already living. They're already there. And so it's just so interesting to talk to someone because I've coached a lot of folks who have SaaS products and they do really well. They don't have to pump out millions of views either. They can do this at very kind of smaller scale and make a good bit of money. So
Yeah, for sure.
I love that. If you were to start today in 2024 and to launch a channel, a YouTube channel, what would you do differently or what would you do to set yourself up for the most success on YouTube?
That's a really great question. I think I know exactly what I would do, and that's what I would do my best to become an expert in whatever niche I'm trying to establish myself in for YouTube. And the reason I've been able to find success on YouTube and with my SaaS platform has been because I just lived and breathed reselling for a long time. I was passionate about it, and I care about it, and it's easy for me to share that passion with other people, and that resonates with people through whether it's through the videos that they watch or the software that they buy. And so if I was starting out today and I was going to a completely different niche, I wouldn't even think about YouTube first. I would think about how do I become an expert and how do I know whether I'm passionate enough to be able to support this, on YouTube in particular. And so, if I wanted to go start another YouTube channel, it would have to be something that I'm already just like really passionate about and have an expert level of knowledge in. And if I don't have that yet, I wouldn't try to start it yet. I would start by getting that level of knowledge.
Sometimes people forget that and they start a YouTube channel about something just because they want to make money or just because they want to do this, but they're going to realize 6 months in when they're out of video ideas and they're out of things to talk about and people are watching their videos and they're like, well, they're not growing. It's because you're not passionate. You don't care about what you're talking about. You don't really know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's a really great answer. What's next for you? Like as a creator, as Justin the creator, what's next for the channel and for you and the plans for you short term and long term?
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely for a while there, I was committed to doing 2 videos a week, and that just about burned me out
Mm.
last year. And I said, okay, I got to stop. There's just too much other pulls on my time in order to do that. But I was able to, coming out of that, I was able to establish this sort of weekly video, which that has become so important for me because again, I don't have to think about it. It's sort of a built-in structure. It's like it's like plug and play. I just know I'm going to do it on Monday. I know how to do it. I know that as long as I record by about noon, I can have it out by 4 or 5 p.m., all edited and published. And so I go and do it and I don't have to think about it. But that has opened up more possibilities for me to start bringing in additional content beyond just that. And so that's really where my channel is headed, is not as often as 2 per week, but my hope is that continuing to do 1 video per week on schedule, and then twice a month doing an extra video on there that gives me the opportunity to sort of explore outside, like how can I get better at storytelling? How can I, say different things? How can I build more unique and creative presentations? And so that's what's coming next for me.
And it helps you with audience retention too, because that normal video, people kind of are going to consume that if they're still interested in flipping and eBay stuff.
Yeah.
They're still going to consume it every week, and they're going to be looking forward to it, kind of like normal television, right? Or cable, right? Is they're going to be expecting you to do that. I've found with this podcast, if I don't release a new episode 6 a.m. on Fridays, I get messages on Twitter or X, and then I get Instagram. Hey, where's the show? Something wrong? Are you sick? And I don't miss very many, but when I have, it makes you feel good to know that people are expecting you to release something. So I love that. The way that I like to end the show, and I have been the past couple of months now, we know how big AI is, artificial intelligence. Are there any AI tools, or has AI crept into your workflow at all on YouTube? Any things that you like to use or recommend here on the show before we close out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using ChatGPT on a daily basis. Probably not in maybe a traditional way. I don't know, but to me, it's like having another friend on the side that I can be like, hey, help me out with this really quick. How should I use this? What should I do? I'm very rarely asking it to do everything for me, but I'm trying to think, I'll maybe come up with an idea of like 10 titles for a video that I really like, and I'll whittle that down to 3. And then, 2 of the 3 I feel like are too long. And so I'll go to ChatGPT. I'll be like, hey, help me make these a little bit punchier, a little bit shorter, fit within 55 characters or whatever. Help me with that type of thing. And so to me, I bounce ideas off of it, and I get, results back from it. And same goes with scripting as well. And so I sprinkle it in a little bit like that. I don't do any sort of AI image generation or anything like that. Not too much of that, but yeah, that's kind of how I'm using AI right now with YouTube.
Awesome. That's what I always tell people. Use it as a good jumping off point or starting point. So it's great to hear you say that.
For sure.
Guys, if you want to connect with Justin, again, it's Justin Resells over on YouTube. I highly encourage you to go over there and check out what he's got going on, even if it's just to kind of follow up from this interview and to kind of see some of the stuff that he's been talking about kind of firsthand. Justin, thanks again for being such a great guest here on the podcast, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.